Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I try to stay out of people's way. Maybe it's because I've been dealing with my disability since I was 19, and I learned pretty quickly that standing out usually means dealing with stares, whispers, or awkward questions. My condition affects my joints and muscles, making walking painful on most days and nearly impossible on the bad ones. That's why I carry my cane everywhere I go. It's not just a walking aid, it's literally what keeps me upright and mobile. My little sister turned 8 last week, and like most kids her age, she had very specific ideas about how she wanted to celebrate. She'd been talking about Chuck E. Cheese for months, practically bouncing off the walls every time she saw a commercial. Our parents were working that day, so I volunteered to take her. I figured it would be easy enough. She could run around and play games while I sat at a table and made sure nobody walked off with our stuff. The place was packed when we arrived, filled with screaming kids and the constant noise of arcade games. My sister immediately zeroed in on the climbing tubes and disappeared into the chaos. I found a table right across from the soda fountain, which gave me a good view of most of the play area. Perfect spot to keep an eye on things. For about an hour, everything went smoothly. My sister would run back to the table every few minutes to show me tickets she'd won or to grab another slice of pizza. I was actually enjoying myself, watching her have so much fun. Then nature called. The bathroom was only about 30 feet away, but by the time I got back, I could see someone standing near our table. A woman in her 30s was there with her daughter, who looked maybe 5 or 6 years old. The little girl was staring at something on our table with wide eyes. I walked over, assuming they were waiting to use the soda fountain right behind our spot. But when I got closer, the woman turned toward me with this big fake smile. She greeted me cheerfully and said she hoped I didn't mind her asking, but wondered if her daughter could try out my walking stick. She was pointing directly at my cane, which I'd left leaning against the table when I went to the bathroom. I stopped dead in my tracks. For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. I asked her to repeat what she'd said. She explained that she meant my walking stick, telling me her daughter had never seen one up close before and that she'd promised her she could try it out. I just stared at her. The audacity of it hit me like a slap. This woman had seen my medical equipment and decided it was some kind of toy for her kid to play with. I told her no. The word came out harder than I intended, but I wasn't about to apologize for it. The woman's smile faltered, and she looked genuinely shocked that I'd refused her ridiculous request. She asked if I was serious, telling me she'd already promised her daughter she could try it. I asked her why she would promise something like that. What kind of parent sees a mobility aid and thinks it looks like fun for their child? She looked annoyed and pointed out that it wasn't like I was using it right now, since I'd walked to the bathroom just fine without it. The ignorance in that statement made my blood boil. Just because I could walk short distances without my cane didn't mean I didn't need it. Just because my disability wasn't immediately obvious to her didn't make it any less real. I explained that it was my medical equipment, not a toy. She scoffed and said I was way too young to need something like that, then told me to just let her daughter hold it for a minute. Now I was getting angry. This woman was not only asking to let her child play with my mobility aid, but she was also questioning whether I actually needed it. I dealt with this kind of attitude before, but never so blatantly. I repeated that the answer was no. I reached for my cane and moved it to the other side of the table, away from her daughter's reaching hands. She told me I was being really rude, explaining that her daughter was just a little girl who was curious. I shot back that I was just a person who needed this to walk, and suggested she find something else for her kid to be curious about. The woman grabbed her daughter's hand with more force than necessary. She called me a name and walked off, dragging her confused daughter behind her. I could hear her complaining loudly about rude people and what was wrong with kids these days. My sister came running back to the table a few minutes later, completely oblivious to what had just happened. She excitedly told me about her success on the basketball game and how she'd won a ton of tickets. I told her that was awesome and asked if she was ready to cash them in. I tried to shake off the encounter and focus on my sister's excitement, but I kept thinking about it. The woman's entitlement was staggering. She'd seen my mobility aid and somehow decided her daughter's curiosity trumped my actual medical needs. When we were leaving, I spotted the woman and her daughter at the prize counter. The little girl was crying because she didn't have enough tickets for the toy she wanted. The mother was arguing with the teenage employee, demanding they give her daughter the prize anyway because she'd had a disappointing day. I smiled a little. Apparently, being told no wasn't something this family handled very well. The whole thing still baffles me. I'm only 24, and I know my disability isn't always visible. But that doesn't give random strangers the right to question it or treat my medical equipment like a prop. What goes through someone's mind to make them think that's acceptable behavior? My sister had an amazing birthday, and that's what mattered. But I'll definitely be keeping my cane closer next time we're out in public. My boyfriend moved in with me last year and things were perfect until his family decided to turn my life upside down. Last Christmas, his parents announced they were selling their family home to go on some 6-month cruise around the world. Sounds nice, right? Well, it would have been if they hadn't decided to dump their 18-year-old daughter on us without asking me first. My boyfriend apparently agreed to let her stay with us until she started university in September. The first I heard about this arrangement was when she was already packing her bags. I tried to talk to my boyfriend about it, explaining that I wasn't comfortable with this situation. We had fights for weeks. I pointed out that our spare rooms weren't really spare. One was my home office where I work every day, and the other was our gym. But he insisted it was only temporary and that family comes first. She moved in after their house sold in February, and it's been absolute hell ever since. The gym became her bedroom and half our equipment ended up in storage. I lost my workout space and had to start paying for a gym membership. But that was just the beginning of my problems. From day one, she acted like she owned the place. The moment she turned 18, she started going out every night, coming home drunk at 3 a.m. with equally wasted friends. They'd stumble through my front door, wake up my dogs, and leave a trail of mess behind them. When I confronted her about it, she just shrugged and told me it wasn't that late and that I was being dramatic. She suggested I should get better soundproofing if the noise bothered me. That's when I realized what kind of person I was dealing with. She started stealing my things constantly. My expensive skincare products would disappear, my clothes would vanish from my closet, and she'd help herself to my perfume like it was hers. When I asked her about it, she'd act like I was crazy. She'd claim she didn't know what I was talking about, and suggest that maybe I just misplaced things. When I mentioned my brand new 80-pound moisturizer going missing, she told me to prove she took it. I ended up buying a lockable box for my bathroom just to keep my own toiletries safe in my own house. The audacity was unbelievable. She's also managed to lose 6 different sets of house keys since moving in. 6! I've had to change the locks twice because she either lost them somewhere sketchy or gave them to random people. Each time she'd act like it wasn't a big deal. She'd tell me that keys get lost sometimes and it happens to everyone. When I pointed out it was the 4th set in 3 months, she suggested I should get one of those smart locks instead. The smart lock comment really got to me because it was my house and my money paying for everything she was costing me. Despite not having a job, she claims to be constantly busy whenever I ask her to help with anything around the house. When I ask her to do simple things like take out the trash or load the dishwasher, she always tells me she can't right now because she's really busy. When I ask her what she's busy with, she says it's just stuff and that I wouldn't understand. She refuses to eat anything I cook, no matter what it is. I've tried making her favorite foods, asking her for meal suggestions, even following recipes she's given me exactly. Nothing works. She always complains that it doesn't taste right. When I point out that I followed her exact recipe from the day before, she insists I must have done something wrong and asks if we can just order pizza instead. And of course, she expects me to pay for the takeaway she demands instead of the perfectly good meal I've prepared. The final straw came last weekend. My boyfriend and I planned a weekend away with the dogs. I was nervous about leaving her alone in my house, but he convinced me it would be good for her to have some independence before university. I should have trusted my instincts. We came back Sunday evening to find my house completely trashed. There had obviously been a party. There were beer bottles everywhere, food ground into my carpets, something sticky spilled all over my kitchen counters, and what looked like red wine stains on my white sofa. She was passed out in her room with a hangover, acting like nothing had happened. When I asked her what the hell had happened, she casually said she just had a few friends over and it was no big deal. I told her it looked like half the town had been there, and she accused me of being dramatic again. She promised she'd clean it up later, but later never came. I spent hours cleaning on Sunday night and had to hire professional cleaners on Monday to deal with the worst of it. The cleaning bill was £300. That's when she dropped the biggest bombshell yet. She casually mentioned that she might defer university for a year to go traveling and use my house as her base. She said she was thinking of taking a gap year to travel a bit, and it would be nice having somewhere to come back to between trips. When I told her absolutely not and reminded her she was supposed to leave in September, she asked where else she would stay and claimed this arrangement was working out great. Working out great for who? Certainly not for me. I told my boyfriend that enough was enough. I wanted her out immediately. I didn't care that her parents wouldn't be back from their cruise until the end of August. I was done. My boyfriend refused to budge. He said she was family and he couldn't just kick her out. When I told him she was destroying my house and my sanity, he called me unreasonable and said it was just a few more months. I reminded him that I owned the house and everything was in my name, so he didn't get to make decisions about who lived there. He accused me of not being serious about kicking out an 18-year-old girl. That's when I realized I needed to go over his head. I sent a text to his parents asking them to call me immediately. I also reached out to his older sister, though I doubted she'd take her in since they don't get along and she has a 2-year-old. When his parents called me back, I got the shock of my life. His mother casually mentioned that I could take the cleaning fee out of her daughter's money. When I asked what money she meant, she laughed and told me about the £700 they send her each month to cover all her expenses while she lives with me. I nearly dropped the phone. They've been sending £700 every single month since February, and I hadn't seen a penny of it. Either she'd been keeping it all to herself, or my boyfriend had been taking it and not telling me. When I told the mother I hadn't been getting any of that money, she was furious. The parents immediately transferred £4,200 to my personal account to cover all the months I've been supporting their daughter for free. They also agreed that she needed to leave and said they'd arrange for her to stay with relatives until they returned. That evening, I confronted my boyfriend about everything. His face went pale when I mentioned the money. I asked him if he knew about the £700 a month, and he said he could explain. When I pressed him about where the money was, he admitted that she was supposed to give it to us, but she said she needed it for other things and he didn't want to make a big deal about it. I asked him what other things she could possibly need the money for, suggesting it was probably alcohol and stolen skincare products. He told me I didn't understand the pressure she was under. That's when I realized that this man had been letting me subsidize his sister's lifestyle while she treated me like garbage in my own home. He'd watched me struggle with the extra expenses, seen how miserable she was making me, and said nothing about the money that was supposed to be helping. I told him to pack his things and that both of them needed to be out by the end of the week. He said I couldn't be serious and that we could work this out. I told him the only thing I was working out was how I didn't see what kind of person he was sooner. The next morning, she finally showed some emotion when she realized the gravy train was ending. She yelled that I couldn't kick her out because she had nowhere to go. I told her she should have thought about that before she trashed my house and stole my money. She protested that she never stole anything. So I mentioned the £700 a month her parents sent for expenses that she kept for herself. Her face went white. She'd been caught red-handed. She tried to argue that the money was for her personal expenses, but I explained that her personal expenses were supposed to be covered by contributing to this household. Instead, she'd been freeloading while I paid for everything. She tried to argue, but there was no denying the facts. Her parents had already arranged for her to stay with her aunt until they returned from their cruise. My boyfriend tried to convince me to let him stay, claiming he didn't know about the money situation, but I was done with the whole family. They moved out 3 days later. She left my house in a mess one final time, but I didn't care because I knew I'd never have to clean up after her again. The £4,000 her parents sent more than covered the professional cleaning, lock changes, gym membership, and all the personal items she'd stolen over the months. My boyfriend sent me several texts over the following weeks, trying to apologize and asking for another chance. I blocked his number. If he was willing to let his sister walk all over me, while secretly taking money that should have been helping with expenses, he wasn't the kind of partner I wanted. 3 weeks later, I heard she'd been kicked out of her aunt's house too for similar behavior. Apparently, some people never learn. Her parents had to cut their cruise short and come back early to deal with their daughter's mess. I'm now enjoying my peaceful house with just my dogs for company. I've turned the spare room back into a proper gym, and my bathroom products stay exactly where I left them. I started as a junior accountant right out of college and worked my way up to senior associate. The company culture was pretty good overall, but like any workplace, we had our problem employees. One of them was this woman I'll call Karen. Karen had been with the company for about 7 years and somehow thought that gave her the right to treat newer employees like garbage. She was in the same department as me, but one level below in terms of seniority, which always seemed to bother her. Management kept her around because she was decent at her job when she wasn't busy making everyone else's life miserable. About 2 months ago, we got a new hire fresh out of college. Really sweet kid, reminded me of myself when I first started. Let's call him the rookie. He was eager to learn, ask good questions, and genuinely wanted to do well. But from day one, Karen had it out for him. It started with small things. She'd forget to include him in important emails. When he'd ask questions, she'd roll her eyes and make comments about how some people just weren't cut out for this work. She'd deliberately give him wrong information about procedures, then act surprised when he made mistakes. I watched this go on for weeks. The rookie was clearly struggling, not because he wasn't capable, but because Karen was sabotaging him at every turn. Other co-workers noticed too, but nobody wanted to get involved. Karen had a reputation for being vindictive, and people were scared of becoming her next target. The breaking point came during a team meeting 3 weeks ago. We were discussing quarterly reports, and the rookie asked a reasonable question about a client account. Karen just exploded. She sarcastically asked if he was serious and demanded to know if he'd been paying attention when they went over this the day before. The rookie tried to apologize and explain that he wanted to make sure he understood the details correctly. But Karen cut him off and told him that some people just don't have what it takes, suggesting maybe he should reconsider his career choice. The room went dead silent. Our manager looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything. The rookie looked embarrassed, and I could see he was fighting back tears. That's when I decided I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I told Karen that her behavior was completely unnecessary and that asking questions to do the job right was what good employees do. She spun around and glared at me, telling me nobody asked for my opinion and to mind my own business. I shot back that it was my business when she was creating a hostile work environment for our team members. The meeting ended awkwardly after that, and I knew I'd made an enemy, but I couldn't just watch her destroy this kid's confidence and potentially his career. Over the next few days, Karen's behavior toward the rookie got even worse. She started openly mocking him in front of clients. She accidentally deleted files he was working on. When he asked for help, she'd tell him to figure it out himself or maybe find a job more suited to his skill level. I'd had enough. I scheduled a meeting with human resources and laid out everything I'd witnessed. I brought documentation, emails, and even got 2 other co-workers to back up my statements. The rookie was initially hesitant to file a formal complaint, but I convinced him it was the right thing to do. The human resources representative thanked me for bringing this to their attention and assured me they took workplace harassment seriously. They said they'd be conducting a full investigation. I offered to provide specific examples and dates, which they said would be very helpful. They also mentioned they'd need to interview other team members who might have witnessed the incidents. The investigation took about a week. During that time, Karen was surprisingly quiet, which should have been my first red flag. She kept giving me these looks across the office, but I figured she was just angry about the investigation. Yesterday morning, Human Resources called Karen into a meeting. About an hour later, she came storming back to our floor. I was at my desk working when she started packing up her things. That's when I realized what had happened. Our manager came over to my desk a few minutes later and told me that Karen's employment had been terminated, effective immediately. He thanked me for speaking up and said it was the right thing to do. I told him I was glad the rookie wouldn't have to deal with that anymore. He mentioned that security would escort her out once she finished packing. I went back to my work feeling relieved that this whole situation was finally over. About 20 minutes later, I was focused on my computer screen when I heard the heavy footsteps approaching my desk. I looked up to see Karen standing there, holding a heavy-duty stapler in her hand. She looked furious. She screamed that this was all my fault and that I'd ruined everything after her 7 years with the company. I tried to tell her to calm down and reminded her that security was waiting to escort her out, but she yelled back asking if I had any idea what I'd done and said I destroyed her career. I started to stand up, but before I could react, she raised the stapler above her head and brought it down hard, hitting me right on the top of my skull. The pain was immediate and intense. I stumbled backward, my vision going blurry for a moment. I shouted at her, asking what was wrong with her. She screamed back that I got what I deserved. Several co-workers rushed over. Someone was already calling security while another person called 911. Karen tried to leave, but two of my male co-workers blocked her path until security arrived. The security guard told her she needed to come with them immediately. She yelled back, telling them to get their hands off her and that I'd ruined her life. The paramedics arrived about 10 minutes later. I was conscious but had a nasty bump on my head and felt nauseous. They checked me over and said I might have a concussion. The paramedic explained they were taking me to the hospital for a CT scan just to be safe, saying head injuries could be tricky. When I asked if it was really necessary, they insisted it was better to be safe than sorry given the force I was hit with and my symptoms. While the paramedics were treating me, I could see through the office windows that the police had arrived. Karen was in handcuffs, still screaming about how unfair everything was. A couple of officers came over to get my statement before I left for the hospital. The police officer asked me to tell them exactly what happened. I explained that she hit me with a stapler after being fired and that I had witnesses. The officer said they'd need a full statement later, but had enough to arrest her for assault since several people saw the whole thing. The hospital confirmed I had a mild concussion but no serious damage. They kept me for observation for a few hours and then released me with instructions to rest and watch for any worsening symptoms. I found out later that Karen was charged with assault with a weapon. The stapler counted as a weapon because of how she used it. She spent the night in jail and had to post bail. The company's legal team also told me that they're supporting me if I decide to pursue a civil lawsuit. Karen tried to call me yesterday, probably to apologize or make excuses, but I didn't answer. My lawyer advised me not to have any contact with her until everything is resolved legally. I go back to work tomorrow, and honestly, I'm looking forward to it. The office is going to be a much better place without Karen's toxic presence. I work at this big box retail store. I started in the electronics section, but I've always been someone who couldn't just stand around when someone needed help. If I saw a customer looking confused in housewares, I'd walk over and help them find what they needed. If someone in grocery was trying to reach something on a high shelf, I'd grab it for them. My co-workers used to joke that I was like a golden retriever, always eager to help anyone who looked like they might need it. The thing is, our store is huge. We've got everything from groceries to electronics to garden supplies, and each section has its own team. But customers don't care about our internal organization. They just see someone in a uniform and assume we can help with anything. And up until last month, I was happy to do exactly that. My manager had always praised me for going above and beyond. During my annual review, she specifically mentioned how customers would leave positive feedback about the helpful young person in electronics who helped them find the perfect shower curtain or whatever. I thought I was doing everything right. Then we got a new supervisor. Let's call her Karen because that's exactly the type of person she turned out to be. Karen came from corporate, and she had very specific ideas about how things should run. She was all about efficiency and staying in your lane. About 3 weeks after she started, I was restocking some phone chargers when I noticed an elderly man in the home improvement aisle looking completely lost. He was holding a piece of paper and kept looking up at the shelves, then back at the paper. I finished what I was doing and walked over. I asked if I could help him find something. He seemed so relieved and thanked me. He explained that he was looking for specific screws for his wife's wheelchair ramp. The list said they should be in that aisle, but he couldn't seem to find them anywhere. I spent about 10 minutes helping him locate the right screws and even carried them to the front of the store for him since they were pretty heavy. He was so grateful, and it made my day. But apparently Karen had been watching. Karen approached me and said she needed to speak with me. I asked what was up. She wanted to know what I was doing in home improvement. I explained that I was helping a customer find some screws because he looked like he needed assistance. She told me that wasn't my department, and that we have people assigned to home improvement for a reason. I pointed out that there wasn't anyone else around, and the customer seemed really confused. Karen said that wasn't the point. She explained that each department has its own staff and its own metrics. When I help customers outside my area, it throws off their numbers. The home improvement team doesn't get credit for that sale, and my electronics numbers look inflated. I tried to explain that customer service should come first, but she cut me off. She told me that from now on, I needed to stick to my area and let others handle their own zones. If a customer needs help outside electronics, I should direct them to find someone from that department or call for assistance over the intercom. She said this was about efficiency and accountability. I asked if she was telling me to just ignore customers who need help. She replied that I should do my job, and my job was electronics, not wandering around the store playing helper. The way she said playing helper really got to me. Like caring about customers was some kind of game. But fine, if that's how she wanted it, I could follow instructions. The next day started normally enough. I was organizing the tablet display when I heard someone struggling in the housewares section just 2 aisles over from electronics. I looked up and saw a woman trying to lift a heavy stand mixer from a bottom shelf. She looked to be in her 60s, and the box was clearly too heavy for her to manage alone. We made eye contact across the aisle gap. She looked hopeful when she saw my uniform. The customer asked if I could help her with the mixer because it was really heavy. Now, normally I would have been over there in 2 seconds. The mixer couldn't have weighed more than 30 pounds, and I could have easily lifted it into her cart. It would have taken me maybe 30 seconds total. But Karen's words were ringing in my ears about sticking to my area and letting others handle their own zones. I apologized and told her I wasn't assigned to that section. I explained that she would need to find someone from housewares to help her. The woman looked confused and a little hurt. She looked around, but there wasn't anyone from housewares in sight. They were probably in the back doing inventory or helping other customers. She pointed out that I was right there, and it would just take a second. I said I understood, but I had to follow store policy. I suggested she try calling for assistance using the red button on the wall or look for someone wearing a green vest since they were the housewares team. I could see the frustration building on her face. She looked at the heavy mixer, then at me standing literally 5 feet away, then back at the mixer. After a moment, she just shook her head, abandoned her cart with all her other items still in it, and walked straight out of the store. I felt terrible watching her leave, but I told myself I was just following instructions. Karen wanted me to stick to my area, so that's exactly what I was doing. About an hour later, my store manager approached me. He looked concerned and said he'd just had a customer call to complain. She had told him that she asked me for help lifting something heavy, and I refused. I confirmed that was right and explained I was following the new instructions from my supervisor. He asked what instructions I was talking about. I explained about sticking to my department and not helping customers outside my assigned area. I told him Karen said it was about efficiency and accountability. The manager's expression shifted from confusion to something that looked like understanding but not the good kind. He asked if I didn't think to make an exception for a customer who clearly needed assistance. I reminded him that I was told to let other departments handle their own zones, and the customer was in housewares, not electronics. He seemed stunned that I had watched the customer struggle with a heavy item and then leave the store empty-handed because it wasn't technically my job. I simply said I was following instructions. The manager stood there for a moment, clearly trying to process what he was hearing. Finally, he just shook his head and walked away. I could tell he wanted to say more, but he seemed to think better of it. Later that afternoon, I saw Karen and the manager having what looked like a very intense conversation near the customer service desk. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but Karen's face was getting redder by the minute, and she kept gesturing in my direction. At the end of my shift, as I was clocking out, the manager approached me again. He told me that we were going back to our previous customer service approach and that I should help customers wherever they need it, regardless of department. I asked about the efficiency and accountability concerns. He said they would figure out the metrics and that customer satisfaction comes first. I never saw Karen again after that week. Word around the store was that she was reassigned to a different location, but we all knew what that really meant. Apparently, our store's customer satisfaction scores had taken a significant hit during her brief reign, and corporate wasn't happy about it. I'm a 34-year-old woman who's worked hard to build a stable life with my husband. We both have decent jobs, own our home, and live comfortably. Not rich by any means, but we can pay our bills and have a little left over for the occasional vacation or nice dinner out. My brother is 2 years older than me, but you'd never know it from how he acts. Since he was a teenager, he's had this attitude that the world owes him something. He's bounced from job to job, never lasting more than a few months anywhere. He always has an excuse ready. The boss was unfair. The co-workers were jerks. The work was beneath him. The truth is, he just doesn't want to work. About 6 months ago, my parents finally reached their breaking point. My brother had been living with them rent-free for over a year, contributing absolutely nothing while they paid for his food, phone, and everything else. The final straw came when they returned from a weekend trip to find their house completely trashed. He'd thrown some kind of party, even though he claimed he was a loner who never had friends over. There were stains on the carpets, holes in the walls, and their kitchen table was completely ruined. Mom was in tears when she called me. My mom called me crying, saying she couldn't do this anymore and that he had to go. I asked what happened this time, and she told me to come see for myself because she didn't even know where to start cleaning. When I got there, the damage was unbelievable. It looked like a tornado had hit the place. My parents had spent decades making that house their sanctuary, and he destroyed it in one weekend. They kicked him out that very day. My aunt, being the soft-hearted person she is, offered to let him stay in the tiny house they had built in their backyard. It was meant to be a peaceful retreat, maybe a place for guests during holidays. She figured 2 months would give him time to get back on his feet and find a job. That was a mistake. When those 2 months were up, my aunt and uncle went to check on the place before some friends were supposed to visit. What they found was even worse than what had happened at my parents' house. The carpets were completely destroyed with stains and burns. The walls had mysterious dark marks that looked like they'd never come clean. The beautiful granite countertops were cracked and chipped. Even the door hinges were broken, hanging at weird angles. My uncle called me with his voice shaking with anger. He said he'd never seen anything like this and couldn't understand how one person could cause so much damage. I apologized and asked how much it would cost to fix. He told me the contractor estimated about $8,000 and that they might have to gut the whole thing and start over. They kicked him out immediately and had to spend their retirement money fixing the damage. I felt terrible that my family was suffering because of my brother's behavior. That's when he showed up at my door. I was making dinner when the doorbell rang. My husband answered, and I heard my brother's voice in the entryway. My stomach immediately dropped. My brother said he needed to talk to both of us. My husband looked at me with that expression that said, "Here we go again." We sat down in the living room and my brother launched into what I can only describe as the most entitled speech I've ever heard. He told us that he needed to move into our extra bedroom since we had the space. I told him we weren't running a halfway house and that he needed to find his own place. He said he didn't have money for rent but had worked out what he called a fair arrangement for everyone. He pulled out a piece of paper covered in his handwriting. The demands were shocking. He explained that my husband and I would cover his rent since he'd be staying with us. We'd also handle all his groceries and any food delivery he wanted. Since he didn't have a car, I'd drive him wherever he needed to go. His phone bill needed to be paid monthly. When we went on vacation, he'd come too and we'd cover his expenses. He also needed his World of Warcraft subscription paid for, which was only $15 a month. My husband and I just stared at him. I thought he was joking at first. I asked if he was serious, and he said he was completely serious. He'd even written up a contract to make it official, and all we had to do was sign it. That's when I lost it. I started laughing so hard I couldn't breathe. The audacity was unbelievable. I told him he wanted us to pay for everything while he contributed nothing, and pointed out that he didn't even have a job. He said he'd get a job eventually, but right now needed support from his family. My husband finally spoke up and said this was insane. He told my brother he was a grown man who needed to get a job and find his own apartment. My brother accused us of being selfish and said that since I was his sister and we were clearly rich enough to help him out, we should do it. I told him we weren't rich and that we both worked 40 hours a week to pay for our house. We just knew how to budget and work for what we wanted. He said it was the same thing and that I owed this to him. I stood up and walked to the door. I told him to get out, get a job, find his own place, and pay for his own stuff like every other adult in the world. He yelled that I was abandoning him and asked what kind of sister I was. I told him I was the kind who learned how to take care of herself, and he needed to figure it out. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard our picture frames rattled on the walls. Over the next few weeks, my phone started ringing constantly. Family members were calling to tell me about the sob story my brother was spreading about how his cruel, wealthy sister had thrown him out on the streets when he was desperate. My cousin called asking if I'd really refused to help my brother when he was homeless. I asked if he'd mentioned the part where he wanted me to pay for everything while he sat around playing video games. My cousin seemed confused and asked what I meant. I had to explain the real situation to everyone. Thankfully, our family knows my brother's history and nobody was buying his victim act. My aunt called a few days later saying that my brother had tried to tell her I was heartless for not helping him. She reminded him about their $8,000 repair bill. Even my best friend got dragged into it when my brother somehow got her number and called her. She told me it was weird that my brother had called her. When I asked what he said, she explained that he wanted her to convince me to let him move in. She'd told him she'd seen my parents' house after he trashed it and hung up on him. The whole thing was embarrassing but also kind of satisfying in a way. Everyone could see right through his manipulation tactics. A few weeks later, I got some good news. My mom called with an update saying that my brother had found a job at a warehouse and got approved for a studio apartment across town. I asked how that happened since I thought he was allergic to work. She explained that his unemployment benefits got cut off and it was funny how fast he became motivated when his World of Warcraft subscription was about to expire. He had to use his security deposit money to pay back our aunt and uncle for part of the damage he caused. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.